I'm the most important thing in the universe, that everything that happens is going to happen to me and it's going to be bad, etc. You're not focused enough. You need a little bit of nervous energy. Everything that happens, you consume it in a particular way and you turn it into that fire inside of you just consumes all circumstances into something positive. You just burn them up. So when I'm meditating, I become extremely aware that thinking is almost a form of a disease. I get that idea constantly as I'm meditating. Like thoughts are coming up and they're negative thoughts. 90% of the thoughts that come up uncontrollably are about anxiety. They're about people who've done things to you that you don't like. It's about problems with people, etc. So many of the thoughts are negative, and you're anticipating, as you say, negative things happening to you. And it's almost like thinking is the problem itself because it divorces you from the moment.
Right.
So I often have the idea as I'm meditating, there's a world out there that has nothing to do with me, that's completely indifferent to Robert Greene. The birds could care less about my fate. The trees don't know anything about my existence. The sky doesn't care at all about me, right? Okay, that's the reality, that's the world. But my thinking creates this thing as if I'm the most important thing in the universe, that everything that happens is going to happen to me and it's going to be bad, etc. So to be able to see that thinking traps you so many times into patterns, that you've been programmed to respond to situations, a lot of times by anxiety. So much of the thoughts are anxieties that you're anticipating what's going to happen, right? If you can just control that, if you could just see that is the source of your problem, and that the world is indifferent to you, and that the circumstances are totally neutral, and that newspaper article that comes out, you can't control it, and maybe the bad stuff will actually in the end rebound to your favor, or it'll make you tougher, it'll make you realize certain things. If you can just see them as facts, as opposed to like these horrible things inside your head, these phantasmos, whatever the Latin word is, then you've got the power. It's the worst thing. It's the worst. I don't know if you can agree with me, but it's one of the worst things ever. So what I've learned is I'm going to prepare the hell out of it. I'm going to have everything nailed down, right? And then sometimes they don't ask you the questions you anticipated. It goes off in other directions. But when you enter that green room or where you're ready to be interviewed, you have a calmness because you prepared. You know what your answers are going to be. You're not sitting there in the moment trying to figure things out. When you're prepared, you're calm, right?
Yeah.
So when you've done your work, and you get on the golf course or you get in the boxing ring or you get on the interview stage, yeah, you're going to be nervous. And yeah, you're going to have adrenaline, because I've found if you don't have adrenaline, you're not focused enough. You need a little bit of nervous energy.
Sure.
But there's a difference between being nervous energy and it forecloses your ability to think in the moment. But when you're prepared, you're able to be calmer. And then if people surprise you with a question, you're not suddenly flustered because you entered with it with a much higher degree of calmness than when if you try to just completely fling it. You're walking around in your world and you're kind of sleepwalking.
Yeah.
You're not paying attention to things and you're not really seeing things as they are, but being aware of where things come from, of what they are, of what their true nature is. That's sort of how the children think, because they're constantly curious. They just don't assume that something just came into the world the way it is. They want to know how and they want to know why. So you live in a world where you're surrounded by things that exist that kind of, you don't really know where they come from or what makes them so interesting, and you're not paying attention to it. So some people have this idea of the sublime, like you have to do these incredible things. It has to be some amazing experience. You have to climb Mount Everest to have that rush and just look down on the world, or you have to be in a space. It's pathetic. It's stupid. It's silly. The sublime is like around you. It's around just looking at your skin, realizing your own body, your own physiology. It's in everything around you is weird and sublime if you look at it a certain way. He says when you take conflict away from a human being, it's like castrating them. You remove something essential from our nature. And he found it horrifying and nightmarish. So yeah, there's always worse in this world. But, there's even good to be extracted from the worst thing that happened in your life without getting Pollyannish about it, because a lot of it's painful and frustrating, but you do have to look at it that way because you can't control it. There's nothing you can do. It just means that everything that happens, you consume it in a particular way and you turn it into, that fire inside of you just consumes all circumstances into something positive. You just burn them up and you evaporate them and you make them part of your life and you incorporate them. It would have been interesting to be inside of his mind at that time and to see like the struggles, because there was a struggle. Of course. It wasn't like easy to do that, and that it took a process, and that it would be interesting because we only have his meditations basically. But what if we had more of that? It would be so exciting to see. You have to kind of just completely read between the lines. So little is known of his life. Like sometimes I wish, damn it, why couldn't I have been born in like the 19th century or in ancient Athens? I just don't like, I would have been so much happier. But then I have so much to resist against.
Yeah.
That it almost is almost like a form of pleasure that I have to like struggle even harder to focus on reading. We so intellectualize and verbalize things, but life is a feeling inside your body. It's an energy, it's a force. How could you ever put the words that would describe what it's like?
It's ineffable.
It's ineffable, but you know it when it's like leaving you, what that feeling is like. So there was another woman who she wrote a great book about her stroke called Stroke of Insight, Jill Bolte. She became a neuroscientist. She had a much worse stroke, and she literally felt all of the life draining out of her body, inch by inch by inch, as death was passing through her. I had a little bit of that, and I also felt that this kind of force that is being alive is like being drained out of me. But I did connect to the feeling of life and the feeling of death, because I had the feeling of death in my body, as I described earlier, and kind of everything that makes you alive kind of leaving your body. So it makes you aware that there's a physicality to being alive, to being conscious, and to that you carry your death within you. And I'm writing a little bit now I'm writing about childhood. And what's interesting is children are actually very much closer to that than we are as adults. They were just born. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they came out of the womb. They came out of the darkness. They did not exist. So they have a feeling of what it means to like not exist, and to have that sudden burst of light and to scream and you're alive. It's kind of a mix of horror and something pleasurable, I suppose. I don't know. But it is true that children have a much more visceral connection to life and death as we do as adults. We lose it because as we get older, so that sense of like dancing on your tongue, that's brilliant. It's just like pervading your whole body. It's a feeling that you're being alive. And consciousness itself is a weird sensation. So sometimes when I'm meditating, I almost have this idea that the world itself is conscious, that it exists outside of my brain, that everything in the world has a kind of consciousness to it. But we don't think about these things. We take it for granted that we're this one animal that's able to think, that has a consciousness.